So, have you had that feeling lately, that little bit of anxiety when you look at the economy? You are not alone, not by a long shot. It feels like the old rules just got thrown out the window, and a lot of us are left wondering, okay, what's next? Well, let's dive into that, because BlackRock has a really specific vision for where we're all headed.
Yeah, this quote from BlackRock's CEO Larry Fink, it just nails the current mood, doesn't it? It's this deep sense of uncertainty that's been bubbling up for a while now. The playbooks that worked for decades, well, they just don't seem to apply anymore.
And that really is the multi-trillion-dollar question. If the guide that investors used for an entire generation is now basically obsolete, what in the world do you replace it with? That is exactly what we are going to unpack right here.
Okay, so to figure out what's next, we first have to understand why everything feels so different. We're living in a completely new environment, a world that's kind of lost the traditional anchors we all used to rely on.
You know, for about 40 years, we were sailing in pretty calm waters. Economists call it the Great Moderation. It was this amazing period of stability. You had steady growth, inflation was something you could actually predict, and interest rates were low. These were the anchors. They made long-term planning and investing feel, possible.
But now, the shift is just dramatic. Look at this. Government debt isn't just high, the projections show it's going to keep climbing. That era of fiscal discipline that kind of held the old system together, it's over, and that ushers in a new reality of much, much higher volatility.
To put it bluntly, those foundational assumptions are gone. The map we've been using for the last 40 years is now useless for figuring out the future. The game has totally changed.
Which brings us to the next logical step. If the old anchors are gone, we have to find new ones. We can't just float around rudderless. BlackRock's core idea is that we can find these new anchors in a handful of powerful, long-term trends that they call megaforces.
It's the question on everyone's mind, right? In this sea of change and uncertainty, what can you actually hold on to for direction?
And according to BlackRock, here's the answer. These 5 megaforces. Now, these aren't fads or short-term trends. These are massive tectonic shifts that are going to define our economy for years, probably decades. This is the new playbook.
Now, I know megaforces might sound a little abstract, so let's make it super concrete. Let's just zoom in on one of them, the AI revolution. Because this isn't some sci-fi concept, it's a tidal wave of investment that's happening right now.
Just to get a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about, look at this number. $68 trillion. That's the estimated need for new global infrastructure by 2040. And guess what a huge driver of that demand is? Yep, artificial intelligence.
And if 68 trillion is just too big of a number to wrap your head around, try this. A single AI data center can suck down as much electricity as a city the size of Honolulu. I mean, think about that. To power this AI future, we literally have to rewire the planet. That is a historic investment opportunity right there.
And listen, this is not just some theory. Here's the CEO of NVIDIA, the company at the absolute heart of the AI boom. He's saying we are just at the very, very beginning of a multi-trillion-dollar build-out. This is real, it's happening now, and it's massive.
So where's all this money going? Where is this stuff actually getting financed and built? Well, that leads us to another crucial shift, a massive move towards the private markets. This is where the future is being constructed.
This is honestly kind of mind-blowing when you see it laid out. The public stock market, the thing we all hear about on the news every night, is actually shrinking. There are half as many listed companies today as there were in 1996. Meanwhile, the vast majority of big, growing companies, they're choosing to stay private. That's where the action is.
So what does this mean for how we all think about investing? It means the old 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, might not be enough to capture the growth of this new economy. The thinking is that you might need a new model, one that carves out a slice for private assets. And the data seems to back this up. Historically, a portfolio that included private assets hasn't just delivered higher returns, it did it with less of a roller coaster ride. Better returns with lower volatility, that's pretty much the holy grail for any investor. Okay, so we've got these huge trends, and they're mostly happening in private markets that have been off limits to most people. And this brings us to the final and maybe the most important piece of this whole puzzle. How do we open up access to this new economy? This quote really gets to the core of the problem. If the next huge wave of economic growth all happens inside an exclusive club, we're going to leave millions of people behind. The solution isn't to tear down the system, but to build more doors into it.
So how do you actually do that? How do you give an average person the chance to own a small piece of a data center, or a wind farm, or the next big thing in tech before it ever even thinks about going public?
While the answer just might come from technology, it's a concept called tokenization. Now, it sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. You take a real-world asset, like an office building, and you convert its ownership into tiny digital pieces, or tokens, on a blockchain. This could be a total game changer. It means you could buy or sell a tiny fraction of that building instantly. It just breaks down all the old barriers.
You know, when you strip everything else away, investing is really an act of hope. It's a belief that the future can be better, but it's also the very tool we use to build that better future. So, in a world that's being completely remade by these powerful megaforces, the question for all of us is pretty simple. What part of that future will you own?